Thanks. I'll be brief in my remarks, and I have a few slides, I think, to substantiate what I wanted to convey. My name is Girish, and I represent this organization called TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute. Unlike most of the people, I think, here who are present in this hall, we are all commercial entities with a profit motive. We are basically a not-for-profit research organization working in the space of energy, environment, and sustainable development. In fact, we are into the 50th year of our existence this year, and it was initially set up by the Tata Group of, by Tata Chemicals. And we are continuing to support generally the society and the industry in the areas of energy and environment. So I think some of the work which we have been doing in the steel sector culminated in a kind of a roadmap or a pathway which we developed last year, which is available on our website. And I'll just go through some of those slides of this pathway. This is the, oh, it doesn't move. Anyway, so generally I think this is the overall landscape. I think I don't need to really repeat these things. But the discussion of this session basically is on the CO2 emissions and decarbonization. And if we really look at it, I think the numbers were mentioned, around 10 to 12% of India's CO2 emission is actually from the steel sector itself. And the average emission intensity is around 2.5. And I think I understand that the minister was mentioning yesterday that one has to bring it down to around 2.1 by 2030, as Paramjit mentioned in the morning today. And if we really look at it, I think the role of the secondary steel sector, the induction furnaces and electric arc furnaces is extremely high. We are almost 50% of the total crude steel production if we look at it. But if one looks at the 100% scrap-based EAF plants, the actual emission intensity is very low if you really look at it, because we are mostly dependent upon electricity as the requirement. But on the other hand, if we are having the coal-based DRI units plus electric arc furnaces, where there is hardly any scrap usage, then those are the highest with around 2.8 as the figure. I don't need to really go into these numbers. I think these are based on the JPC numbers. And of course, the electric induction furnaces, which are mostly represented here, are close to around 900. But we heard in the morning that this might be more than 57, I think, as was being mentioned in the previous session. And if we really look at the energy consumption, again, of course, from induction furnaces purely, it is not as high as one would consider in terms of the total tons of oil equivalent. The sponge iron producers are almost around, I would say, 22 tons of oil equivalent, whereas the rest of it is almost 75% of that is coming from the sponge iron. This is the roadmap which I briefly mentioned, I think, and the roadmap, the details are available on our website. But as was mentioned, I think the 5 key pillars for the steel industry to really meet this 2070 net zero goal have to be energy efficiency, increase scrap utilization to the extent possible, go in for renewable energy to the extent possible, promote RD&D, and then the policy and the regulatory framework, for which we already have extremely good efforts being made by the Ministry of Steel and other government bodies. On the energy efficiency, I think since you all, I have just put it on this slide of the work based on the work which we do with the steel sector, the best available technologies in terms of how one should be more on the use of operational practices, process scrap usage, ideal furnace loading, lids, adoption of energy efficient auxiliaries. I think these are the things which sometimes we don't really bother about it. Cooling water pumps, dust extraction fans, efficient motors, automation, and of course the new age induction furnaces, which many of these representatives are present in this conference. In terms of the scrap, one really knows, if we really see this last one, it's almost 85% reduction in terms of the emissions if we are using scrap as compared to the BF route. And on the RE, of course, I think the major areas, of course, is that if all of you can think of in a way how to really go in for more and more RE adoption, because if you're using electricity as the real route for your entire energy consumption, those who are purely on the induction furnace route, either it has to be the on-site or off-site captive RE generation. And it could be own investments. There are now many RESCO companies which are already very, very active. And of course, the open access system has been improved. But yes, there are challenges, issues at the state level, at the DISCOM level. We know about that. In different states have got different kinds of issues, whether it is in terms of the transmission charges, the wheeling charges, the cross-subsidy charge, the congestion. Those issues do exist, but I think that's perhaps the only way forward when we have to move towards a net zero pathway. Deep decarbonization is something which Mr. Paramjit Singh mentioned, and I think the earlier speaker also mentioned. I think the role of hydrogen will definitely play an important role. Globally, research is also happening on the molten oxide electrolysis, specifically in USA and other areas, but maybe that is something for the next, after 20 years or something. But definitely green hydrogen has to play an important role moving forward. This is the final thing which, based on the research which we have done, that ultimately by 2070, if you really look at it, the light blue one, which is there at the top, the last bar, if you see, that is the hydrogen-based DRI route, will definitely have to play an important role moving forward. We do have the announcements by the Government of India of almost 18,000 crore rupees program on the green hydrogen. I think the first set of bids have already come in. But those who are actually not directly into hydrogen production, of course, on the steel side, you really can't do much. But I think the industry which is on the iron making, that will have to make a major shift. The steel part has to remain on electricity itself. And then, of course, the other is the role of carbon capture and storage. Again, it is very early days, but I think it will have some role, definitely, given the fact that we have a fairly large BFBF production in the country. So finally, 4 or 5 key messages. I think hydrogen direct reduction is going to play an important role, then coupled for iron making, and then coupled that with, of course, the electric route. To the extent possible, increasing the scrap-based steel has to play a major role. I just heard from you, sir, I think that there are countries who are trying to put borders around the scrap being sold. We know that scrap is an important commodity. And, but I think with the policies from different government bodies, the central government, the scrap policy of the ministries of the central government, and also I think the availability of scrap, I guess, hopefully should be increasing in the country in the coming years as we move more and more towards electric vehicle and the automobile sector moves towards electric route. With policy support, we do believe that yes, definitely the country is going to move towards a net zero pathway by 2070. And I'm sure, I think that these things are broadly known, but the very fact, this is the last point I wanted to mention, but the very fact that in a conference like this, which a few years back would be only talking about what are the products which we are having. If you're having a session on decarbonization, and if not a session, I think the entire conference is called decarbonization, that itself is a very significant step, that the knowledge which needs to be disseminated to all the players in the SME space, that yes, decarbonization is important. One major point has already been covered in that. Thanks a lot for the invitation.